The altercation with the police officers happened in front of a church tent, did it not? So, and you engaged them a little bit. I mean, is anything to share?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? So I'm standing in front of a sign that says in giant letters, "You are welcome here," in front of the Glendale Methodist Church. And I was trying to read the small print on their sign, and it said, I actually don't know what it said. And one of the ladies approached me and said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am. Are you a Christian?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Can you tell me the gospel?" And she didn't know what I meant by the gospel. She didn't know what that meant. And I just told her, "Well, I've lied and I've stolen, and I mean that sincerely. I'm not just I've done more than just steal. Take a 20-minute break when I had a 15-minute break. I've really stolen. I've really lied. I've really hated people. I've come close to killing a person before, and I've done some real bad things I don't even want to mention. And I have to face God on Judgment Day. And how can a just, holy God let me into heaven? That's the gospel." And so she was real confused. She called in her female pastor, which, I guess if you're going to fly a rainbow flag, then all bets are off at this point. So, and they were trying to communicate with me, and they just told me to do the best that I could, try to be a good person. And I don't know about you, but that's not worked out too good for me, just trying to be a good person. So that was it.
So one of the things I want to make sure is said, and I want Joe to speak to, there's a lot of chatter up there about the case the city has against Joe and why they arrested him. There's folks that will tell you, well, this is all stupid, and I don't know why you guys are whining and fighting, because the Franklin Pride group rented the space, and if you watch the video, per the police officer, their talking points was, well, this is now private property. And that distinction's important. In fact, someone said that it's no different than someone renting a room at the library. All right. What makes this actually completely different is that you have to understand, per ordinance and per the permit that was filled out, that was not a rented space. To my knowledge, I don't think the group paid anyone any money for the space. It wasn't a rented space. It wasn't a ticketed event. This was a permitted, no different if I went to the city and asked them for a permit so that I could speak downtown, right? I'm not going to cordon off that area. I'm being permitted to do something, but the public is still welcome to be there. That was the situation at Harlinsdale. You had a citizen well, I don't even actually know where you live. Doesn't matter. He lives in Smyrna. So you had a Tennessean that showed up on public property at a public event, open to the public, who was arrested by the police for saying that he was trespassing on private property. And so this is, we all know why he was arrested, the real reason, right? And so with that, you sort of knew a little bit about that, apparently, as you walked. I don't know how you knew all those details, but someone prepped you. You were ready for that. Why was it important to you not, as they say, leave peacefully? Why was it important to you to stand your ground? Because folks are saying, well, he tried to get arrested. He wanted to be arrested. I'd like to hear from you on that as to why you did not go when they asked and stood until you were arrested.
So thank you. I met Brian, the guy with the American flag on the back of his truck, on the way in, and then there were some other Christians that kind of came up and were letting us know that they were getting kicked out. And that's when I actually found out that it was kind of like a political thing, right? Like that the mayor of Franklin. And this is not to be mean. This is because this is the sin. We're made in the image of God. So men, when you are weak and pathetic, you're in sin. And I've been weak and pathetic most of my life. And the Lord made me strong, and he continues to make me strong. And there's no excuse for being weak and pathetic. If you're a husband and you're not the spiritual leader of your household, if you do not bathe your wife in the word, you have a problem and you need to fix it. And it's not okay to walk around being weak. So that's number one, right? The other thing is, the Lord prepared me to go to jail. I ended up having a work trip to go to Malaysia. And I had witnessed to some of the people that had come by, and the Hindus and the Buddhists were fine with it, but the Muslims warned me that if I did what I did in America and Malaysia, that I was definitely going to go to jail. And I told my boss I didn't want to go, and he said I didn't have to, and then they made me go. And I was certain that I was going to go to jail in Malaysia because I knew that I was going to have the choice between Jesus and the gospel, right? The gospel of Jesus Christ and going to jail. And I was afraid I was going to be too cowardly, but I ended up doing it anyways. I got to come home early. I got reprimanded by my company for preaching the gospel in a place for breaking the law, which is against company policy, right? But I had the choice, right? Either God's law or man's law. And so when I was at Franklin Pride, it was pretty simple. When this police officer said, I'm going to throw you in a U.S. prison, and the Lord had already prepared me to be thrown in jail in Malaysia, it didn't seem that hard. What a blessing that he would do that for me, right? He literally said, I want you to do this. Just kidding. You only have to do this. You only got to go to jail for 4 hours. So I'm standing there. I'm telling them the gospel. There was a bunch of Christians in the parking lot, and they had to basically just hunker down and hide. They weren't allowed to go back in. They weren't allowed to bring their Bibles in. And it was between that and taking a stand. So it was either tell the gospel or go hide in the parking lot. And I'm not saying anything bad about those men and women. They were courageous for going out in the first place. But God gave me the courage in that moment. And it was actually a woman that was praying with Brian. I don't know if she's here. But she said, instead of praying, she's just going to read out of Joshua. And she read the courageous chapter, right? And then God strengthened me in that moment. It was amazing. I tried to be respectful to the police officer. And this is something, as Christians, we're not called to be kind. We're called to tell the truth. There is no kindness commandment, right? You guys know Bodhi Bacham. He says the 11th commandment's not in the Bible because it's not, right? We're not called to be kind. We're called to be ambassadors of Christ. And we live in a unique society that God gave us. Paul wrote that you had to follow the law, and if you rebelled against the government, that you were literally rebelling against God. And then God gave us a country where we're called to actually stand up against the government. He gave us a country of self-governance where part of our duty is to actually stand up for what is right. It's an amazing thing. And so we're called to do this thing. If we don't do it, we're given this country, we're given a mandate by God, we got to do it, right? So it was either that or walk away.
I love what you said about God's law or man's law. I think that's a decision that we oftentimes are going to have to make. Well, I say oftentimes, but we're going to have to make it more often than we think, I believe, coming up here in the very near future in America, a lot less than we're used to. One of the things that I loved about on video, well, thankfully, that whole altercation was caught on video, which is, I think, that in and of itself is a God thing. Because what I don't know how many of you have seen the video of Joe engaging with the police. You got to go watch it. If you go to TennesseeStands.org, the first thing you'll see is a button that says Help Joe, and that takes you to I did a video interview with Joe, and we've got the footage in that video of his interaction with the police. And it was interesting. It's one of the most respectful things you'll see. It was literally a man standing before these law enforcement officers who was armed with the truth, knew the truth, was willing to stand on the truth in the most respectful way you can, and stood so much for the truth that he was willing to go to jail for it, and which they ultimately are. Did you go to jail? How long were you there?
I only went to jail for like 4 hours.
Okay, 4 hours. That's not too bad. Well, before we close, I want to leave you with this. You have a trial date coming up on September 5th, or a pre-trial, so they call it. I guess September 5th, they're going to determine whether or not the city or the DA feels like they really want to pursue this. They really have a case to move forward. And so I would ask you to pray for September 5th for an outcome. And I would also ask you, if you are not subscribed to our newsletter, TennesseeStands.org, please.